Once upon a time, the infamous rover Reynardo plundered the floating isles. Then his mother called him to her deathbed. "Swear to me that you won't die on the gallows," she rasped. Reluctantly, he swore. And he whiled away his days at home with music, cards, and wine. But the Emperor had changed. He'd been good once, a shy, almost humble toad. He'd built universities. Then people started whispering about mass graves in the woods, midnight rituals, victims screaming. The Imperial Ravens would round up entire villages, and no one ever returned. The Ravens had come to Ubar scouting for ancient books said to be of great power. But the librarians had hidden the books, so they'd burnt the librarians. The citizens, outraged, had driven them off. The Ravens had come back with dropships. The kid had fled with one of those books. He was brave and dumb and wanted to join the rebellion. And Reynardo had promised his mother he'd protect him. The kid was looking down, watching his city burn. "Sorry, kid," Reynardo told the kid. "Look, if we give them the book, they'll leave you alone." "My mother died for this book!" "I promised her I'd protect you." Oh, damn it. The kid had run off. With the book, of course. So Reynardo had to run after him. The two Ravens were staring at the kid like he was their dinner, which probably was what was in their tiny brains. "Hey," Reynardo said. They cocked their heads at him. "Pick on someone as ugly as you." Wait, that didn't come out right. "For the Emperor!" The Ravens cawed and rushed at him. A dropship flew overhead. He hoped they hadn't noticed him. The kid. Oh, right. The Gate of Heroes. Someone's idea of a joke, making the Skyship Docks a gated community. You needed a hero's sword to open it. And the kid was on the other side of the gate. Who let you through? Promise me you'll take the book to the rebels, or I'm gonna steal your ship. I'm not taking that damn book anywhere, and neither are you. Try and stop me, laughed the kid.
I bet you don't even have a hero sword.
And with that, the kid hopped away. Had to hand it to the kid. He was an idiot, but he had guts. Where was Reynardo going to get a hero sword? Ore and wind essence? Perfect. A hero sword. QED. This is what he got for settling down and finding people to care about. The kid's mum had been a swell cook, and she'd laughed at Reynardo's jokes, even when he didn't know he'd made one. And then the ravens had come to burn her. And she'd made him promise to protect the kid. But she never told him where the book was, just the kid. He came up to a ledge. It was too far to jump. There'd been a bridge here before, hadn't there? And there was Peter, giggling at him. "How'd you get across?" he asked the kid. "Where'd you find a hook?" "I hopped," said the kid. Wise-ass kid. "Hey, look out behind you!" "Cute," said Reynardo. Ah, ravens. It was time to talk some sense into the kid. Just hook his way across the ledge and chase the kid down. Thing was, he hadn't used his hook since he'd retired. How had he done it? Maybe if he meditated at that altar there, he'd remember his old skills. Starting to come back to him. Something you never completely forgot, like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. And there was the Farfarer. She was the fastest ship he'd ever known. She could do the Kessel Run in 12 furlongs. Oh, so the salesman had told him. And something told him the kid was about to walk into an ambush. "Stop!" he shouted. "I'm not giving you the book!" shouted the kid, and took off. "No! Peter!" But the kid ran for it, and a goggler nailed him with its ivy. The book was unburned. Next to it were the buckles from the kid's shoes, and a kid-sized pile of ashes. Damn it, why hadn't he lied and told the kid he'd take the book to the rebels? The kid would be alive now. Really pissed off and betrayed, but alive. Oh, damn it. Reynardo picked up the book. He couldn't let the Empire have it now. He was going to have to get it out of there. Well, he'd hated home. was the big deal about this book, anyway? Find out. All that had been years ago. How many? The war was a blur, and now 3 Raven scout ships were chasing him.
Where are you running, rebel?
Cawed the Raven captain over the loudhailer. Renato could see them cranking up their catapults.
Just going out for milk?
Renato yelled back.
Where can you run?
Laughed the Raven horribly. Far behind him, another city was burning. The dark cloud above its island was thousands of Imperial ships. The fleet was doing a thorough job.
Take us to the rebel base, and we'll spare your life!
It cawed. The entire jury-rigged rebel fleet was only a few islands to the east. Beyond that were only the pillars of heaven, a sea of endless blood-colored tornadoes. The rebellion was out of time, unless Renato could bring a game-changer. Maybe he could. Renato had found out where he could find the pieces of the Sky Ripper, the legendary weapon that had exiled the lost gods. Surely a legendary weapon could win the final battle. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino had sent Renato a desperate message saying he had a brilliant scheme to save the rebellion. If Renato could only rescue him. Renato dived the Farfarer towards the abyss. As he felt the heat of the jet stream, the Raven ships peeled off, not stable enough to follow him down there. Now it was time to choose. Lapino or the Sky Ripper? Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Renato could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Renato could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the Ravens. He hoped they hadn't eaten him. If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Renato never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it? This chest had teaspoons stolen from every inn in Boreas. Oh, and something more useful. With materials like this, he could probably make a really nice pair of barbecue tongs. Or even a sword. If I craft a sword now, it's going to be really short. These things could really use a hand. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the Lost Gods, thousands and thousands had died. But Reynardo had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one. Reynardo's blood was up. He just needed to smash something. Hero Wall, Hero Sword, Ice Wall, Ice Cube. Reynardo had learned so much about... Ooh, what was it again? He needed some way to break the ice with this wall, so to speak. looking at? Oh, right. No one.
Can't we just agree to disagree? Said Reynardo. No?
puzzle. Reynardo loved puzzles. Except when he couldn't figure them out. On the other hand, if there was a puzzle, it was probably meant to keep people away from something good. See? That wasn't so hard. Starting to come back to him, but completely forgot. Like how to freeze time when attacking. The more he fought, the more he'd probably remember. There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. It was a no-brainer. He'd sacrificed his old friend Lapino to get the armature. And the armature was useless by itself, only a series of coils and wheels. War demanded sacrifices, and he would make more before the end. He would have to choose the greatest good no matter how much it cost him. Zenobia. Well, he would see her sooner or later, across a battlefield or a sword's point before all this was over. He was sure of that. The power was in the core. Obviously, he had to get the core. Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Skyripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense?
This is why heroes are called dashing, Reynardo thought. See? Dashing? Get it?
Who needed bridges anyway? Doubt sunk in before he was even out of sight of the Farfarer. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? It was the sort of path he'd always avoided. The path of responsibility, of seriousness. Had he grown up? He didn't feel grown up. He'd made this decision from his gut, like he always did. Somehow, he'd impulsively decided to stop being impulsive. Did that make any sense? That was always a rush. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time.
I wonder what I could make with all these sword crafting materials, thought Reynardo. did that go to?
There were fewer and fewer trees. There were only these huge crystalline growths. Had those been here before? He no longer heard birds except for the feverish cawing of the ravens when they attacked. He couldn't smell the small animals of the forest, the mice and rabbits. Where had they gone? And he was getting hungry too. This was an unhealthy place to be.
Missed his old skills. He welcomed them back like he was at a reunion.
The 20-sided core made him feel physically sick. Once he had sneaked into a temple of the dark arts, and he hadn't liked what he smelt and saw there. This felt like that. As quick as he could, he wrangled the icosahedron into the armature. The wheels began to spin, then glow. The sick feeling quickly spun away. Now he only felt sad. He had lost good friends for this war apparatus. He carried his prize back to the Farfarer. Now, he had to make his next move. There was a key Imperial outpost on the Nexus. If this really was some sort of super weapon, he could use it to wreak havoc on the enemy. And if it wasn't, well, better to know that before the final battle. But maybe he should show it to some scientists first. There was an observatory on the Nexus. Maybe he should go there before he fired it. Reynardo had never been much of a student. At Swordfu School, he'd never read the books, just looked at the pictures. And Zenobia. But weapons he understood. His gut told him that the Skyripper would work great. He would use it to take out the Imperial outpost. And what's the worst that could happen? The thing wouldn't work, and then he'd take it to the scientists. Right? Exactly. As he set out down the path, Reynardo wondered why the parts of the Skyripper had only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had discarded it. This Emperor, Isengrim III had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Perhaps that was bringing up lost artifacts. How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction.
These platforms were great.
As he set out down the path, Renato wondered why the parts of the Sky Ripper had only surfaced now, thousands of years after the Transcendent Emperor had discarded it. This Emperor, Isengrim III, had performed terrible, bloodthirsty rituals to invoke the lost gods. Perhaps that was bringing up lost artifacts. How perfect, then, that the Sky Ripper would reappear to be his destruction. When Renato went to the china shop, for some reason the owner was always nervous. Craft with the materials he had. Renato had a pretty good idea, actually. Odd that they never locked these things. He was tired of slaughtering ravens. Maybe it was time to test out the new weapon. He turned a knob on the Sky Ripper. It made strange, mechanical noises. The wheels spun faster. It began to hum. The Sky Ripper was following his every step. At least it acknowledged him as the master. But there was no trigger. How was he supposed to fire it? Fire, he said. Nothing happened. Well, maybe it just needed to warm up. After all, it hadn't been fired in thousands of years.
A crafting bench. Renato wondered what he could make with it.
It was good to practice your moves, thought Renato. Keeps you limber. The Sky Ripper was making a whining noise now, and its wheels were spinning so fast he could no longer see them. Renato had a thought. "Please?" he asked. The Ripper began to glow. Boom! The outpost burst into flame. Ravens flapped out screaming, wings on fire. The base was his. The Farspeaker Toad came hopping out. "Renato!" it croaked, sounding like a toad version of Zenobia.
Don't use the Sky Ripper. It will destroy the world.
"Yeah, sure it will," cracked Renato. "Pull the other one."
If you don't trust me, go see Calaveras.
That sounded sensible. Why did she always have to sound sensible all the time? Oh, it was infuriating. Of course she would say that. He was supposed to hurry and bring the Sky Ripper to the Council so the rebels could actually win the war. But what if she was right? Damn it. just this once, he would not let Zenobia get into his head with her logic and her wisdom and her appeals to reason. He was a fox. He'd go with his instincts, and it would all work out like it always did. Oh, he was sounding like a reckless idiot, even to himself. But if there was one thing Reynardo could never bring himself to do, it was turn back on a decision he'd made. Imperials were flapping and cawing all around the ruins. They must be panicking with rumors flying of the superweapon. Maybe they hoped to find and destroy the base before he could put the Skyripper into action. The Skyripper was whining and heating up. It would be time to use that energy soon. Reynardo felt like he was ready to learn new things. Thank goodness he didn't have to go to school for that. This was way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway? There was an inscription. Praise the sun. He'd once met a pirate captain who used hooks to get around his ship. Oh, what was his name again? talking about. This was a fantastic weapon. Ravens burst into flames with just a touch of its killer beam. He was tempted to leave it on all the time, but he didn't want to accidentally slice off some council toad's head or tongue. She'd been trying to distract him. Well, this time, no one was going to distract him. You blinked. That could have gone better, thought Fernando as he died. Huh? A lever? That was new. Most people still use doorknobs. The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
That was awesome!
It was all coming back to him. He wondered what he'd remember next. Imperials were flapping and cawing all around the ruins. They must be panicking with rumors flying of the superweapon. Maybe they hoped to find and destroy the base before he could put the Sky Ripper into action. The Sky Ripper was whining and heating up. It would be time to use that energy soon. You know, ore is pretty heavy to carry. You know what's not? A new sword. That would come in handy in a pinch.
Bernardo felt a little better.
Don't look down, he thought. Talking about this was a fantastic weapon. Ravens burst into flames with just a touch of its killer beam. He was tempted to leave it on all the time, but he didn't want to accidentally slice off some council toad's head or tongue. She'd been trying to distract him. Well, this time, no one was going to distract him. Boy, it looks could kill. Wallabies, he thought. Why did it have to be wallabies? Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. It was on fire. So far, so good. What's there? As he headed towards the council chamber, Renato felt everyone watching him.
"You've saved the rebellion," said the council speaker. "Frankly, we were afraid you'd turn aside to save that idiot Lapino."
If you never make sacrifices, he said, you're probably not doing the right thing. The speaker nodded.
"Are you ready to lead the charge?"
Let's roll, he said, with grim satisfaction. Renato set sail for the fleet. The Sky Ripper had lost its wine. It was humming now, as if it had taken some time to seat properly. He had always been irresponsible. This time, he'd done the right thing, made the hard decisions. He was a real hero. He hadn't let himself be distracted by old friends or old lovers turned enemies. Finally, he could be proud of himself. He was ready. So was Sky Ripper. The Sky Ripper had a will of its own. It picked out its own targets and set them on fire. This was going to be a short battle. He would set the ships on fire if he didn't need them to get to the Emperor. And he wondered if he'd see Zenobia, or if she'd flee. Wouldn't she be proud of him? At least, a bit of respect. He'd become an all-conquering hero. Hey, I'm a firefox, thought Renato. He wasn't that good. Yet. by his side. He was more and more extraordinary. Of all the artisans he was creating employment for, truly, he was a job creator. Whee! Hey, what do ravens say when they die? Never mind. I'll wait. There was an inscription on the platform. Balaleka lessons, with an address. There was a parchment on a signpost. It was from her. Every time you fire, you risk the destruction of the universe. That's insane. We surrender. A trick did. He could hear horns blaring the retreat. Maybe it was true. Maybe they had one. Ready to blossom within him, or something. Sometimes, waved his sword around for hours. And there was Zenobia, wearing the white robes of surrender. She came and kneeled before him. Why didn't you listen to me? I was trying to save you too. You're the end. A terrible word. And made a gesture with her hand. She stopped moving, covered in frost. And he wondered why she'd frozen herself. Then the Sky Ripper froze. And then, for a moment, he felt very cold. And discovered that he couldn't move. The next thing he knew, the sun was a giant, monstrously red. It took up half the sky, and he was in a parched red desert. And then he was on fire. Okay, that was weird. He could have sworn he just died. Instead, he was on the Farfarer, sailing away from Ubar. And it was still burning. He'd fled burning Ubar years ago. His fighting the Empire had been nothing but a vision into the future. A useful vision if it was true. He'd learned something. Zenobia still had feelings for him. He'd made bad choices. But now, when the real battle came, he wouldn't make those choices. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. The book's pages began to flip backwards, towards the beginning. And he realized that his adventure was just beginning. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced, or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis Stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Reynardo. On the other hand, his old friend Lepino needed rescuing. Lepino was no game changer, but could Reynardo really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis Stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Reynardo went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis Stone? Long hidden in a buried temple, another ancient item that was only resurfacing now, drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? That ought to be enough for a proper sword, he thought. Renato distrusted doors that opened automatically, especially after being buried for millennia. Was this some sort of trap? Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. And he hadn't come too late. It was definitely easier to fight inanimate objects. Cool. Wish I could do that. Renato was remembering all his old tricks, and some new ones.
You really ought to ask for a raise. That is a very cool sword, thought Renato. No, seriously. He couldn't feel his paw anymore. What were these poles exactly? Parking meters from the time of the lost gods? Renato wondered if it wasn't cheaper to build bridges and stairs.
Boy, someone has spent a lot of money for a graduation present. There had to be something useful in these things, didn't there? The Ravens, at least, could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with Tomb Raiders. Reynardo hated cannon traps. Also, who reloaded these things anyway? We never figured that part out. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give me blood. It was the stone. Eager, thirsty. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Reynardo wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the Transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "What's the core?" said the stone anxiously. Was he listening to a talking rock? Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself. To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially when they've become enemies. As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun. Was it the time of the lost gods before the transcendent emperor? Was it the future? Feed souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls, its thirst for blood. All right, I get it. This was going to be interesting. The new pathway made Renato curious. "Say goodnight, Gracie," said Renato, wondering who Gracie was. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws. "Are you here to surrender?" She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. "And I've missed you too, love," he chuckled. She spotted the stone and bolted without another word. Hey, a workbench! He could try out his new bling.
faster, stronger, bolder. If only he could figure out which.
Reynardo checked for a false compartment. Nope. Every day he was getting better and better. The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Reynardo. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him. Finally, Reynardo caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. Kill her, whispered the stone. You cannot win your rebellion without it. Please. No, said Zenobia. Not that way. Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? With a flick of his wrist, he slashed Zenobia's throat. Her eyes widened even more. And then the light went out of them. Reynardo felt amazing. Power was rushing into him like water from a burst dam. Oh, such brilliance, exulted the Iblis Stone. Tasty. He felt a bit bad about killing her. He was pretty sure she still loved him. But needs must when the devil drives. Reynardo returned to the Farfarer and set a course for the Nexus. The Empire had a communication outpost there. He could call the Emperor directly. It was time to seize the outpost and let the Emperor know what he had done. The Nexus was beautiful. He'd never realized how beautiful. Everything glowed. The wind was so sweet. The sun so soft. The stones so warm. The black raven feathers. Black feathers. Suddenly, his eyes are filled with them. He's falling through smoke, under a dead sun. A voice calls him home. Is this a vision? Whose? Is this the time of the lost gods? Or the future? No matter. What mattered now was killing his way to the Imperial outpost, challenging the Emperor from there. Imagine if you built a house on one of these things. Oh, that would be amazing. It would be like having a boat. Time for a little exploration.
Reynardo really liked the sound his sword made in the air.
Up ahead was Lupino. What was he doing here?
Reynardo! Hey, buddy! Hey there, old buddy! Please don't kill me!
Why would I kill you? Asked Reynardo, although he had been thinking about it.
Well, you've become... look, I mean, no disrespect at all here. Kind of evil? Maybe you should, I don't know, go to the mountains to Have a think? See if maybe you're sure the stone is not all that healthy a thing to keep?
I suppose you wanted, Reynardo said, and poked Lapino in the chest for emphasis. Oh, had he just killed Lapino? Oh, damn it. He'd go to the outpost, use their far speaker, tell the Emperor what he'd done, and then he'd go to the secret rebel base, let them know he was ready to lead them to victory. Ooh, wouldn't his gauntlet look swell with that jewel in it? Reynardo rampaged through the Imperial outpost like a water buffalo rampaging. At the last moment, he remembered not to kill the Farspeaker Toad. After all, he wanted a word with the Emperor. But there was only silence. The Emperor was scared, like little girl. Well, he would gather the rebel army and slaughter the Imperial fleet. Yes! Applauded the Iblistone. Tremendous. Then the Emperor would have to answer his Farspeaker, wouldn't he? Who are you? Asked a distant voice that sounded uncomfortably like Zenobia. What have you become? The mountains. Go to the mountains, urged another that sounded a bit like Lapino. The Rebel Council to let them know to gather their forces. Then he killed the Farspeaker Toad. Why? Oh, because to make sure his sword was sharp. Oh no, that's awful. So no one else could use it. Yes, that's it. Then he set off for the ruins and the secret rebel base. The ruins were crawling with ravens. Probably looking for the secret base, Reynardo thought. But then he realized they're probably looking for me. They must be very scared of me. Well, here I am. You are the honest warrior ever, whispered the Iblisstone. And he had to agree with it, for once. Who was as good as Reynardo?
It was time to make a new sword.
Long live the Emperor!
Caught the ravens!
Everybody who wants to die, raise your weapon. All right. Reynardo was so happy. The stone was the best friend he'd ever had. Really, who would bury such a treasure in the desert? Soon, he'd go rally the rebellion and usher a new age for the islands of Erda. Once you try it, you're hooked. Reynardo wondered where he could find a snack. He was feeling a bit peckish. Oh, they really ought to put a railing on this thing, he thought. Magical jewel. Reynardo couldn't wait to find a workbench. Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. This jewel was more than sparkly. It had arcane power and an engraving. To Cindy? Urged the stone. Let me make you Emperor. Come to think of it, Reynardo thought as he put down another raven, why shouldn't I be Emperor? How did anybody get to be Emperor anyway? By making war. Not counting the transcendent Emperor, obviously, who had banished the lost gods and started time. Yes. He should be Emperor. He would make a great Emperor. Right, Stone? Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. First you need a sword. If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger.
trusty old sword was always a little better when he sharpened it. A dent in those shields. Those sheaths were really very well made, weren't they?
Two eyes, good. One eye, dead. Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. Ah, the road less traveled, thought Reynardo. How intriguing. Reynardo strode into the council. Let's do this thing. Let's make me Emperor. They looked confused and nervous. Ah, had he mentioned the Emperor thing? Yeah, he meant to bring that up later. I mean, let's go win this rebellion! He waved his sword around encouragingly. They ran. Cowards. He'd stop them. He cut down a few to inspire the others. But soon, there was no one to cut down. Well then, he'd have to attack the fleet alone. More for me, he said. Unless it was the stone that said it. Traitors. Traitors, all of them. They'd run rather than following him, rather than cheering him. What should he do to the cowards? Anything he wanted to. After all, he was a true hero, the best warrior there ever was. No one could stop him now. But first, finish him. The Emperor, that is. Where was the rebel fleet? They weren't even trying an assault. They were going to miss a day in history. The downfall of this dynasty, and a new one to take its place. He didn't have to kill all the ravens. He could enslave them. And enslave the toads too. All the animals would worship him as a god. For he had once been a god. They would willingly give him their blood and their souls. And the world would change, would become familiar again.
What's behind door number 2?
Wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. They really needed to construct additional pylons. Reynardo was glowing with dark power. Already the sun had dimmed. He could do anything, he realized. He could wrap the island safely in smoke again. He was beyond a hero. He was going to become a god again. How odd, he thought, that the Iblis Stone had nothing to say about any of this. Well, no matter. Once he killed this petty Toad Emperor, he would bring back the Black Time.
Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway.
was an engraving. Maximum capacity, 130 people. He found the Emperor and the Council huddling by his ship, plotting. They saw him and cowered before him.
Back to hell, fiend.
Croaked the Emperor desperately.
In the name of the Transcendent Emperor!
Croaked the Speaker. They held some arcane items he didn't recognize. He simply flexed his will and sucked their souls out of their bodies. And Iblis exulted. It is finished. And the void that had been a mere stone on a sword expanded. It stretched and ripped like a vast womb. And a gaze, black and pitiless as the sun, passed through the void into the land. And so time ended. Reynardo stared at the book. He was still alive. Again. And still only flying away from burning Ubar. Had he lived that adventure? Or only dreamt it? Had he really died? It felt so real, not like a dream at all. And he'd lost again. Oh, he hated that. But he had made different choices. And he'd lost in a different way. It was the book, wasn't it? Oracles showed you your destiny. But this was showing him different ways he could die miserably. Thanks a bunch, book, he thought. But these were destinies that he did not have to fulfill. But he'd learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But that meant there must be a destiny where he survived and won, right? Otherwise, what was the point? And with that, the book's pages fluttered back once more to the beginning, and the clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, A temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, but could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. The Ravens had figured out that Lapino was a rebel spy. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen a winged horse. He'd only sold it. But where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens? The platform used a hybrid propulsion system fueled by anti-gravity and wishful thinking. The Ravens had taken the town. Renato had seen villages emptied like this. All the people taken away to be sacrificed in the Emperor's secret rituals. Renato hoped the people were just hiding. Renato thought of the Iblis stone and shivered. He had no business messing with ancient, cruel artifacts. What he needed was his friends around him. Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship. Well, he always wanted to do that. Ravens were landing everywhere. The advance guard. He'd better get moving. If they got to Lapino first, they'd eat him for breakfast. Or a snack. Ravens weren't picky. If they got hungry, they sometimes forgot to interrogate their prisoners. Even top spies like Lapino. Where had the Mad Rabbit got to? Well, no sense collecting more materials. It was time to make something pointy. Renato felt a chill run down his back. Or possibly a flea. Dirty and bloody, Renato finally reached Lapino. The rabbit was practicing his shuffle. Renato recognized the cards. It was Lapino's favorite deck. Oh, I thought you were in danger. I am. The Ravens are coming. Oh, the prison thing. Right, yeah, see, this guard owed me 53 ducats, so we made a deal. They're very reasonable people, actually, for weasels. Now, I got a brilliant plan to kidnap Zenobia. We capture Zenobia, we find out what she knows, and that's the whole war right there. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Capture the Emperor's greatest general, who happened to also be a deadly sorcerer, and, oh, his only daughter? That would be worth it. And it would be nice to see her. He'd always had a soft spot for her. And he felt sure she had one for him. On the other hand, he could still get to the core of the Sky Ripper, even if he couldn't get the whole thing. It must have great power. Zenobia wasn't just the Emperor's daughter, of course. She'd been Renado's best friend in Sword Fu school.
And you're still mad for her.
The rabbit reminded him. The rabbit had a point. And Renado had a feeling she'd want to see him again. Who knows what could happen between the two of them this time around?
She knows all his plans, chuckled the master spy.
She won't give them up easily.
She'll tell the interrogators, all right,
said Lapino. Taking her would change the game, all right. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renado shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Would he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty. He had all the ingredients for a pretty nifty sword. Hoped his hook didn't break. Come on. One fox, no waiting. Renado smash! Fire? Yes, please. This couldn't be good for global warming. What exactly was Lupino up to this time? You could see the wheels spinning inside his head. They made Reynardo dizzy, in fact.
Well, the eyes have had it.
So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Reynardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Reynardo. Oh, this is gonna be fun, said Lupino, as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan. The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. There was blood on this one, so it hadn't saved its owner. He knew the known knowns, and even some of the known unknowns. But he didn't know the unknown unknowns. You dig? Renato felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Peppino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Renato jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat. "Renato," she said, "are those new scars? They look good on you. You never returned my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Ah, what does an imperial princess know about style? Ah, get a room, you two," said Lupino, probably sensing the chemistry. But the fleet was coming on fast, so they took Zenobia east, over the Nexus. She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying goodbye, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Renato was aware of her feelings. Maybe this was a bad idea, but was he letting his own feelings get the better of him? "Listen," said Renato. "Let's not do this." "Let's not do what?" asked Zenobia. "Look, you're the Emperor's right hand. You are going to have me interrogated," she said. "Sure, yeah, but..." Then I remembered how you feel about me. How I feel about you? "You are going to have me interrogated." "But I didn't, because you care about me," said Renato. "Well, guess again, Buster," he said, and she pushed him off his own boat. As he plummeted towards the bottomless clouds of the abyss, Renato decided that he'd not really handle the situation with his usual finesse. He had tried something bold and paid the price for it. The city was already under Zenobia's control. I had to admire her efficiency. Renato shivered at the thought of Zenobia at the mercy of the interrogators. Could he really turn her over to them? But this was war. It wasn't meant to be pretty.
A chest full of old banana peels. There had to be more. There was.
The city was burning, and there was no one to put out the fires. If somehow Zenobia survived her father and inherited his crown, what sort of empire would she be heir to? But he couldn't think about that, could he? newly remembered knowledge. He needed to focus. Reynardo could feel the burn. Where was a workbench when you needed one? Oh, never mind. What exactly was Lupino up to this time? You could see the wheels spinning inside his head. They made Reynardo dizzy, in fact. Reynardo hated gogglers, but it freaked him out to cut them. Smashing things was fun. Reynardo rubbed the fruit into his wounds. He felt better already. So, what's this plan of yours? Use me as bait, said Lupino. And he outlined a slightly complicated plan that involved geese, a net, setting the Farfarer a little bit on fire, Lupino dressing as an old blind toad, and Reynardo hiding inside a monstrous watermelon. What could possibly go wrong? Thought Reynardo. Oh, this is going to be fun, said Lupino, as he ran to go set up his marvelous plan. I wonder what happens if I go that way. Nice. That could be useful. Renato felt dubious about the whole plan. With every step, he was waiting for it all to go horribly wrong. But against all odds, Peppino's idiotic plan worked. Zenobia's ravens ran off after the geese, the net dropped, and Renato jumped out of the watermelon and put his sword to Zenobia's throat. "Renato," she said, "are those new scars? They look good on you. You never returned my velvet jacket. It was my favorite. You look stupid in velvet. Ah, what does an imperial princess know about style?" "Ah, get a room, you two," said Leppino, probably sensing the chemistry. But the fleet was coming on fast, so they took Zenobia east, over the Nexus. She'd vanished from Swordfu School, from his life, without even saying goodbye, without ever telling him she was the Emperor's adopted daughter. Renato was aware of her feelings. Maybe this was a bad idea. But was he letting his own feelings get the better of him? Ah, Leppino was right, Renato thought reluctantly. She knows things. She recognized his look. "You're taking me to the interrogators, aren't you?" she said, wide-eyed. And then she jumped, with horror. Renato saw Zenobia plummeting. Then he saw the Nexus below them. Cats always land on their feet. "Ah, she'll head for the Imperial outpost," yelled Leppino. "You have to catch her." Cats can run faster, but foxes can run longer. If he ran, he could head her off before she reached her minions at the outpost. Well, he did love a good chase.
Who do I have to kill to get a drink around here? You? Okay.
chest was filled with reprints of the entire Sandman series. Reprints? God, what was the point of collecting those? Ooh, and there was something else. Good thing Renato didn't have vertigo. Renato had once invested in a jewel store, but it lost money because someone kept robbing it. Twist, it was him. Renato wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles. He was closing on her. He could smell her fear. He tried not to think about the interrogators at the secret base. What did they do to her? Maybe it didn't have to end that way. Maybe it did not matter how outnumbered the rebellion was. The secret Zenobia held could level the playing field. Codes, passwords. She could wreak havoc with just a few whispers to a far speaker. Renato reached the outpost. The Imperials there were no match for him. Soon after, Zenobia limped up the path. When she realized he was already in front of her, she didn't even try to run. Oh, you left without saying goodbye. Again, he said, please. I'm enjoying this a little too much. She said, shaken. Oh, spare us the chit-chat, would you? Said Lapino as he shackled her hands so she couldn't throw spells. She knows all his plans. All the way back to the Farfarer. Lapino nagged Renato about how the interrogators would pry all the intel out of Zenobia. How that would turn the tides in the imminent battle. All they had to do was take her to the rebels' secret base. Renato didn't like to think about what the interrogators would do to her. Couldn't he just talk to her? reached the ruins, Renato could see ravens everywhere, searching for the rebel base. They'd have to hide the Farfarer or go on foot.
What if we get separated?
Asked Lapino, for once thinking ahead. I'll show you a map to the base, Renato told Lapino.
Renato, don't do this,
Said Zenobia.
we were friends once.
Shut it, witch, or I'll shackle your mouth too, said Lapino. And then, a few moments later, they touched down. As Lapino pulled Zenobia off the Farfarer, Renato readied himself for the battle ahead.
I'm sorry I nicked your jacket, she said. It's just... It's stupid, but... It smelled like you.
What?
He said, confused. Then... Why didn't you write? Why didn't you first speak?
Oh, save the romantic nostalgia! Let's go! Shrieked Lapino. So Renato launched himself down the path to the secret base. Renato had heard stories of a dungeon where chests were filled with potions and weapons. Fairy tales. Renato had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. I need more materials, thought Renato.
Out your eyes.
Renato had misgivings. It had been Lapino's idea to capture Zenobia. Lapino who guessed she'd run to the outpost. There was something wrong with the way none of Lapino's plans had gone wrong yet. It wasn't like him. What else could you hook? Reynardo had always wanted a flying carpet. This was more like a flying tabletop. But it would do. So that's what they meant by a firewall. What unlocks a firewall? They caught their breath. It's beautiful, she said, looking at the ruins. He said, before your father's ravens smashed it. Do we have to talk politics? She asked. That's not how I want to remember you, she said with an odd, wistful look at her face. She was as beautiful as she'd ever been, and as brave. Peppino huffed. They got back on the trail. So much. It was time to turn it into something he could use. These things really slice like ham. long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good. No one beat Reynardo at hot potato.
I don't have anyone to talk to.
This one looked familiar. Had he lost this one in a card game? Welcome back, he thought. As they made their way to the secret rebel base, Reynardo felt strange. Zenobia was his prisoner, yet somehow she felt more like an old friend. He wanted to tell her all his secrets, but suddenly the ruins lit up with thousands of fireworks. There was a thunderous roar and dust rose. The caves were collapsing.
The caves.
"You've been playing me?" Reynardo said, and he stared at Zenobia. "I'm sorry," she said, and she seemed almost embarrassed. Then everything went dark. When Reynardo came to, he had a terrible headache. Also, Zenobia's sword was at his throat, and her shackles were gone. So was Lupino. "The terrible thing is," he said, "I really have missed you. Now that we've destroyed the rebellion, would you consider becoming an advisor to the Emperor's daughter?" "I'm no one's servant. Everybody serves. Even if it's only destiny. I like to choose my own destinies," he said. "The whole point of a destiny is you can't choose." "Oh, never mind," she said. "Look, if I see you again, I'll have to kill you." He watched her ship soar away. He would see her again, he decided. Even if he had to fight his way across the entire fleet. The Imperial fleet was cleaning up the few rebel remnants. For only a moment, he thought about running. But heroes don't run, even when the world is against them. Even when their cause is hopeless, and their efforts futile, and pointless, and useless, and death painful and guaranteed. He's decided to stop thinking for a while. Had that door been opened before? you always wanted to do that?
Felt like Tarzan.
Renaro's arm was sore, his armor wet with raven blood. He was tired of death. But death was not yet tired of him. The rebels were losing. Badly. In some other universe, Renaro thought, he and Zenobia had left Sword Fu School together, taken other names and sailed off into the mists. Not this Zenobia, and not him. For him, there was nothing to do but forge ahead. Kill the Emperor and end this.
This was much easier than free climbing. Sorry, mustache, thought Renaro.
At last, he reached the Emperor's ship. Zenobia was there. Why'd you have to come back? She said, guess I'm just serving my destiny. He shrugged. You don't even know what that word means. She said, do you ever wonder if things have been different all the time? she said, and drew her sword. In the end, Reynardo lay bleeding out on the deck. Zenobia sat by his side, upset. "What are you so upset about?" he asked. "You wouldn't understand. Why didn't you tell me you were going to leave school? I was afraid you'd convince me not to." "I guess I'll have to buy you a drink in the halls of the Valiant then," he told her, and then he was gone. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, and he hadn't learned anything new this time. He'd done the same thing twice, yet expected a different outcome. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. On the other hand, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Lapino was no game changer, an old friend to the Ravens. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces. What could have brought them to light? This Emperor, Isengrim III, had once been kind, but he'd gone mad. And now he was conducting secret, obscene rituals to bring back the lost gods. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the earth? It was more than Reynardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Reynardo could not help but feel a tinge of guilt. He'd left Lapino behind. He hoped the Mad Rabbit had somehow escaped the Ravens. He hoped they hadn't eaten him.
If they had, he hoped they hadn't eaten him alive.
Why had he chosen the Sky River? Renardo never made plans that required constant vigilance. He was a hero. He didn't think too much. He just went with his gut and hoped it all worked out. The Sky Ripper was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself to it. No side journeys, no rescuing old friends. That was against his nature. Could he stick with it?
Ooh, sparkly, thought Renardo.
Now he could slice the wings off a fly in the air. Not that he would. It's sort of mean, really.
He hadn't noticed that path before. That had been his mistake before, thinking he could win a battle of wills with an ancient evil all by himself. He had to be cleverer than that. Or braver. Or something. There was an inscription. No spitting.
I hoped his mother wasn't watching. Hey, is there a word for a lot of ravens? Like a doofus of ravens?
For some reason, Renato remembered a fairy tale his mother had told him about a land where only the apes talked and animals went around without clothes.